Oh, yeah, I just thank you for your time. That a lot of you probably know the last time we really had any church planter training was, I think, January of 2019, January, February of 2019. So it has definitely been quite a while, and it's not as though there has not been a need. Ted Powers has stepped into this space really well with his foundations course that he's been doing, here in part of Midwest Alliance. It's been going, but almost all the people, for understandable reasons, are from the Midwest, and it's really is time to get something up and going again. But one of the aspects that was, I think, a bit problematic before when we had it, how many of you went through church planter training? Have done it, okay, of some sort. What happened, I think, for a lot of the time, initially it was just part of the end of assessment, which was a wonderful time. Oh. After a couple of days of assessment, to then be told this is how you go plant a church. Not the best use of anyone's energy at all. But then in the early 2000s, it was Steve Childers. That's really what got it down in Orlando and Oviedo. When Steve stepped away, M&A took over. It was at Canterbury, which was good training for church planters, not to expect a life of luxury, but have a Spartan opportunity in an Episcopal retreat center. As Ted always said that the challenge with the church planter training that was being done from Childers and that M&A picked up was we were 90% information, 10% inspiration, but zero implementation. And it was, again, a lot of good information, but most of the planters came once. And some of them came, it was a 2-track. You could come a second time. There's a 3rd track for leaders, but you would at most would go 1 year and then the next. The trouble is you get all this information, and even many times you get the notebook and then say, now go do it. And that is not a good way to train anyone for the long haul. So with all of that being said, what I'm proposing that we do is use a much more of a just-in-time delivery method for church planting. That is, we create a system in which the people are receiving what they need in that year in which they're going to most likely be using it. So, and I'll show you what the chart looks like, and see how it bears out, and how I want to get implementation to be a part of this, not have it just tied into that brief period that you're gathering together for more instruction. First thing is, right now we are looking at and looking to have church planter training March 11th through the 13th, so noon to noon. It will be this first one in March of 24 will be at Trinity in Lakeland, Florida. They have agreed to host it, right, Drew? They've agreed to host it. Yes, they've agreed to host it. Tim said yes too. But then the idea is we do it at least once a year, if not perhaps twice a year, in March, and then in probably November, early November. And also moving it around. It's not going to just be in one place. Not that the training will necessarily be regionalized, but to be able to move around helps, as I think it helps as well. At this point, the registration as of today is open. Make sure I get the right. Are you seeing? Nope, that's not what I want to show you. Never mind. So if you see it, stop looking. Do you see a map of the United States? Yes? Okay. Now are you seeing the church planter training? This is the brush fire sign in. Okay. So it is open now. More information will be coming out. But what I wanted to highlight here is that it will be the cost right now, or cost, is going to be just $200, $199 per person, or $250 per $249 per couple, and we'll bump it up then. What's not there, and because I realized we should have added it, is that for any seminary students, it will be half off. There are options that we can scholarship others for whom financial considerations are a concern. So that's what we're looking at this point. And I will say at any point, please stop me. There's only 14, 15 of us on, and so this is ask questions as we go along, and we'll have time for questions at the end. So that kind of gives you a little bit of the that overview. The structure is, I think, one thing that's going to be important. So this is how I'm looking at it at this point. And again, this is a work in progress and process. I've already talked to a number of people. I'm wanting your feedback as well. I'll be glad to send you a copy of this as well. Just get any feedback that I can from you. If you notice, for the 3 days, there will be 6 tracks. The first track really is focusing on those discerning it. So seminary students, anyone before they've gone to assessment, interested in maybe finding out what assessment is, anything along those lines. So,
Hey,
yes,
Chris, I'm just seeing a blank screen.
Okay, well, thank you. Yes, let's do this again. Now, are you seeing a chart?
Now I see a chart. Thanks.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. So you can see the tracks, the dates, each one of these being a module. And when the time comes, we'll fill in who's going to be leading in that. That's another point to discuss. But the idea is, in any given year or twice a year, move it around, you would be those who are interested in just discerning, do they want to be a church planter? Then when you get into those who've come through assessment that are ready to roll, the next track would be anything from your presence on the field to actually gathering, because we're recognizing, it used to be we would say, okay, go out and plant, go start gathering. A lot of times our planters, unless it's a mother-daughter situation, you really need to get a presence in the context of where you're at and understanding that context. 3rd year, gathering to launch. 4th year, launch to training. 5th year, training to particularization. If we do it twice a year, if your plant's moving quicker, you could push these together, because you could go in March, then again in November. If things are going slower, you can stretch it out. We're finding the average length of a church plant from arrival in the field to particularization is just under 5 years now. So no longer are we saying 3 years and you should be just off on your own. The other aspect of wanting to add here is helping them think from particularization to reproduction. We have to stop thinking that the end goal is just having a particularized church. The idea is reproduction, and it is health. Too many of our churches, once they particularize, they run into a buzzsaw around years 7 or so, as there's a second session, other leadership. If it's a high entrepreneurial church planter, they don't know how to manage. So we want to provide some ongoing help and encouragement. This track could also be helpful for any church that wants to be, as a church, wants to begin to think about church planting and reproduction. So yeah, I'm trying to give a long process. People can step in, step out, but wanting them to make use of this on an ongoing basis. I have filled out the modules. This is Chris Vogel's first shot at it. I think these are ideas. I'm getting ideas from others and in wanting to incorporate them. I'd like to get some feedback from all of you as well as we go along, what your thoughts might be in this way. One of the things I'm trying to see here. So I am have been in conversation with Geneva and Auxilio, having them come in and participate, with Paul Joyner now being the director of pastoral wellness or well-being, I forget which it is. having them speak into the life of the pastor, of staff, and such, as well as talking to Deneen Blevins. Need to build some more of that out as I talk to her with parakaleo. And even it does, whether it's parakaleo or not, but would like to get some women doing some of the modules here as well, because we need the plant. Because part of the idea too is I'm hoping it's not just a planter coming. If they can, obviously the planter's spouse it's always great, but I think there are points in which it's good to if there's a team involved for them to come and to be able to have opportunities for men and women in those spaces. So that's what the specific training would look like. What would happen then, and not necessarily during these months, but I'm just spitballing it now. When you are done with this segment, you would then be in a virtual cohort, and I'm beginning to round up people that would facilitate those cohorts. You would meet 60-90 minutes once a month for 8-9 months, but on a regular basis, with the view of how are you implementing what you learned in your track. So each track would then have a series just of questions, of talking points, so that you can say, for example, the whole thing on cultural intelligence or cultural accessibility. Hey, you heard about this in this one segment. How's that going? And be able to roundtable it, workshop it as a group. As much as possible, these virtual cohorts would be affinity based. So if you're in a similar context, you'll be in the same phase of planting. But if I can break them down more, if it's a multicultural cohort, that's great, because those issues will be a little bit different. If it's urban, rural, small town, suburban, whatever, or any ethnic minority group. So the idea is that's where the implementation is supposed to take place, as well. So initial thoughts. What do you see? What would you like to see? What would you not want to see?
I have a question, Chris.
Yep.
Track 1, how is that distinguished? I could maybe make some assumptions reading that tiny little font,
Sorry.
But how is that distinguished from the church planter readiness work that we've done before?
Yeah, the readiness seminar, I haven't gotten from Stephanie yet how many go through it. I think it would aid that. It would give some of the same information, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because it would reinforce it another way. But not a lot of people that go to assessment. So when I do, pre-assessment screening, well, if I do the screening, means they haven't done the readiness.
Yeah.
So if they've done readiness, yeah, they wouldn't necessarily have to. The one advantage is you'd also, because there are spaces in there, I'd like to get people considering church planting in the same space with people that are in various phases. I think that's an important way of helping them see. Unless those people in other phases are in a corner crying, I don't want them to see that. I just wanted them to see shiny, happy people. So
Okay. Good. Thank you.
yeah. Any other thoughts? So
Chris, maybe.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, obviously I'm here in Lakeland, so for the regional leaders in the places where you're thinking about doing this, could you do a 2-minute version of what kind of the responsibilities of those regional people would be in hosting?
Yeah. What I would say is, to whatever degree they are able to, we will need rooms, we will need space, and certainly any of the background support. So it's somewhat similar in some ways to when you host an assessment. It'll be along
Except probably a much larger scale.
Yeah. Again, I have no idea what the turnout's going to be, especially initially. Is there a huge interest? Is everybody forgotten that they ever need training, and there will be low interest? I'm hoping for more. So yeah, in theory, if we have all those tracks and there are, 10 people in each, now we're up to 60 people plus support staff and, leaders and such. So yeah, we could hit 80, bigger scale, certainly. To whatever
It's the one question I get asked the most, to be honest with you.
what's it going to be?
No. Where can I get training?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you're trying to engage participation, I would expect it to be high, especially since that we've had such a vacuum of anything like this
I agree.
in the last 4 to 5 years.
And with the idea, what I'd like to do, and this is where, much more on my shoulders, not the host shoulders, although any place hosting it, as much as you or your presbytery, your network can help with it. But what's on my shoulders is to get sufficient funding so that this is a pleasant, enjoyable experience that you're going to want to come back to. Again, I know when I brought Janet to the training in Oviedo, I never minded Canterbury, but it was a bit Spartan, cinder block house, and I know you might have those in Lakeland, those geckos climbing over everything. It freaked my wife out, but that's okay. And just kind of a cafeteria style food. Again, it would like to be able, it's not going to be gourmet, but we want it so that people want to come back year after year, not just for what they're receiving as information, but the idea of this is a place to build the relationships that are needed for the long haul. And it's going to be a variety of people leading. So one of the things I'm looking to do, you can see all those tracks. If we move this around, would like to have 3, 4, 5 people that have some degree of competency to do any one of those modules. It's going to take about 9 or 10 people for any one event to facilitate those modules, to lead those modules. So
I mean, to cover all the tracks, to if we're doing all tracks, it will take maybe 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Not 10 per track. Okay.
No, right. Yeah, no. Because you're looking there. I've just recently kind of multiplied them. I had larger blocks. I'm keeping it to 51-hour blocks instead of bigger blocks.
While we're on the issue of blocks and things, can we have access to that document so we can look at it?
Yeah.
With like right in our own laptop or print it out?
Yeah, some of us with old eyes, I understand. No, yeah, I'll be emailing that out.
My eyes are old like the rest of me, so that's just a fact.
Yeah, no, I'll be emailing the spreadsheet out to everyone. Okay. So yeah, the idea here is just kind of give you a quick overview, and then with that, what I really am looking for is feedback. Just say, hey, I think we should have this or we should have that. I don't think we need that. Right now, Auxilio is getting, I put some things in there that I think Auxilio would do, but they're going to send me what they think, because I think talking about finances and administration, some of that back office stuff is necessary at each phase. So people that are discerning, they need to know, hey, it's not an impossible task to do this, because even if you don't know how to raise funds, here's some help type thing, all the way to, and talking with Keith Moore the other day, he said he's finding particularized churches that want to plant aren't thinking through how to help a church plant get started. They're kind of like treating them like a 28-year-old living in their basement, paying all their credit card bills, or kicking them out when they're 17. It's like, one or the other problems. So every track needs that. Every track needs, I think, some of the spiritual formation that Geneva is going to be doing. So we're not just doing the technical, we're doing the interior life as well. One thing I got to look at again, I mean, how much in there do we have in each track to be thinking, again, being culturally accessible, whether the church is truly multicultural or not. Do they have an understanding of what cultural accessibility is? That's not just racial, ethnic, but is, within our context, gender and age and all the rest, disabilities, things like that.
Hey, Chris, for point of reference, how similar or dissimilar what you put together that you're going to send to us, would you compare it to what GCA and what Childers did, or the Ann and Ted show when they did training?
I think that now I did not go through that training. So my training was, Mike, you were in the same assessment, was a day and a half after, after the whole thing. And I think, Steve, you might have had that same experience. So it was, and then after that, it was just the Midwest gatherings that we had at Naperville, which was helpful, but was a little bit different. So when I went through the GCA and went through what M&A did, I was always in track 3. What I sat in on, well, it was always good stuff. It was a bit more what Ted's doing now with foundations, which is kind of the first level, with the view of then we'll help you through the rest, but it's not necessary. It was never really delivered at the point in which it's needed. So with GCA, you could finish with a large notebook. Well, all of a sudden you're getting that in year 1. You're not going to remember to go back to that in year 3. And it's kind of, again, more of an adult-centered learning style. Give it to them when they need it and understand it. So that would be one difference.
Cool.
The cohort, virtual cohort, I think, is the other big thing, the implementation. These are not coaches, but it is that, one, you be in a group of people in the same phase and stage, so you're going to have that ongoing conversation. You'll also have someone specifically asking you, what are you doing with this? And make sure, in a kind, loving, keep your feet to the fire, keep up with it, to encourage you not to let some of the stuff go because it's just not your wheelhouse.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
Chris, do you anticipate the content of each of these different 5 tracks being somewhat standardized, but they have different trainers coming in year after year to do that? Is that kind of how you're thinking of it?
Yeah. Without being overly rigid.
Right.
Again, getting some of the key people to start. I mean, some of it I have written out. Others, Ted has stuff written out. He and I have talked about this and how he'd be bringing in what he's done and others, and at least be able to have an outline of, in this hour, please cover these things. Do it in your own style, and that doesn't mean from year to year we may not take something out, put something in, but I'd like it at least initially to have some standardization to see and to ask what is needed. That's one of the things I want to do now moving forward, is I would like to reach out to as many church planners as I can to say, what did you not know and what did you need when if you had this opportunity, what would you have liked to have heard? And we can't do it all, but I think we can do something.
Yeah. I have a recommendation. One of the things maybe is to consider the trainers that you gather together to do that work, that there could be a workshop before for them to have the content. And then also in some ways for those percentages to change, so that it's not just 90% content, 10% inspiration and 0 implementation, but that they actually are inspired, the trainers inspired to make the training experience itself more integrative and experiential in real time. And so to, have some equipping or show some of the different trainers, because there's a lot of probably experts in these different areas that could speak on those, but how they package it and put it together, that could be really helpful to have some encouragement to maybe, think outside the box of how to make that content come alive and make it a little stickier.
Yep. No, I think that's very helpful. I think that's good. Yeah, I've been thinking somewhat along those lines of, here are things please incorporate in your hour, that it is not you saying, well, I'll take questions at the end and you got 3 minutes left and you've been talking the whole time.
Yeah.
No, that's great. That's good. And I, kind of would think of reaching out to you, Tammy, to think, you've got skills there. Who are the others that could do some of that? Yeah, good. thoughts?
I have another question.
Yeah.
So I'm coming from the coach mentor angle, a little less the trainer angle. What kind of access do you envision that church planter coaches would have of the timeline, the stages, some of the training things that these church planners have gone through in order to work in concert with the church planter, so that the coaches, because there's a lot of coaches at different organizations and different things, and they kind of have their coaching model.
Yeah.
But if they're helping a planter move through certain stages, timeline to reaching certain milestones, how are those communicated so that if they want to work in concert, that would be helpful?
Yeah. No, I think that's, and I think that could be one of the, if I'm hearing you correctly, having the planters see if their coach is able to come to be a part of it. And again, sometimes coaches may well have multiple people going through to be able to sit in on it. Certainly having access to the outline information, which is a bit more static, but if they're not able to physically be there, I would. I don't think I see no reason to keep this proprietary that no one can have access to it. Is that what
that's exact kind of what I was asking, is the access for coaches, so that the church planner isn't, hey, I go to a training, but then Steve or CMM or Flourish or somebody is telling me a whole different set of milestones, timeline.
Oh yeah.
You follow me? Although there can be multiple, there's wisdom in many counselors, but can there be just a little bit more coordination,
right?
So that there's a cohesive message. Not that the coaches have to follow it exactly, but at least there's better understanding.
And I think some of that can be just finding out, which is something I don't think we have. Okay, who are the coaches out there? Say this is what we're doing, just so you know. You don't have to gear towards that, but we want you in the loop, and we want any thoughts, any insights you have in the process.
Yeah,
good.
Hey, Chris, thinking about financial sustainability issues, has there been any consideration of like bi or co-vocational church planners, or to be part of church planning teams that could be processed in some of this?
Yeah, I mean, the challenge that we've had and will continue to have is our training can be pretty monolithic in its structure. It would be the typical PCA model that we have used. One of the things we are looking at doing, well, let me back up. One of the things at the front end, want to make it clear with planners and moving forward, is talking much more about teams. The idea of and I've been using a phrase now. I realize I probably shouldn't use it because it's used by other people, because I use it negatively, and I use the term gospel cowboy, but I mean that in the Lone Ranger sense, not in the other sense, Tammy. So sorry. But moving away from what we as boomers did to look, you got to think of teams. So one of the things you'll see on there is using the APEST model. And I'll have to clarify that so I don't get on some blog spot that I'm now Pentecostal. That might happen anyway. But with that, some of the other aspects there. To that end, one of the things we're looking at doing is replicating this model in other forms and contexts. So, for example, this is one specific way, and I want to think more clearly, Craig, what you're thinking of. So Bill Sim is going to be taking this, and he'll be doing it perhaps just in Korean, but he's also going to create something that might be in English, but that will be more Pan-Asian, in which the instructors in the context will understand that culture. And so I think there would be a good reason to think either encased at this place, but it might be helpful for looking at any sort of truly multicultural, but even more so bivocational or a different kind of team setup. We can do it then, or we might need to find another place or try both.
Now, I love your APEST module there. I think that's a great addition.
Yeah, I have found that very helpful. If we qualify it, it's not a problem for us. So any of the critiques shouldn't be a problem.
Thanks.
And because the problem that we've had is, if you know the APES model, at PCA, we're all STs, we're all shepherd teacher, but and that's one of the reasons we're just not seeing the creativity. There's not the apostolic voice. We don't have evangelists, by and large, and we need them. So. Good.
Chris, I have a question.
Yep.
Would it be most helpful if the trainers who were doing the training, the experience, let's say I was a part of the training team on track 1, that I might make myself available to be in a cohort in that follow-up? Was that, or are you anticipating cohort leaders to be separate from the trainers, or maybe if you came to do a training that you're also saying that I'll commit to working with these people in the next 8 months or something like that in the follow-up? Do you have any idea of how that might play out?
Yeah, no, I have been creating a list that I got to make sure when I send stuff out, nobody sees my list, because I haven't talked to everybody yet. I don't want anybody to go, oh, my name's there. So, certainly if you're a trainer, if you want to lead a cohort, that's great. I don't want to lock you in. If you train, you must also do a cohort. Or if you train, you can't do a cohort. And so I would leave that open to the individual and what their schedule looks like for that year, as best as they can tell. So yeah, I'm good with either. One of the things I'm also trying to do with this is definitely a secondary or even tertiary. This is a place where I want us to begin to raise up those that have less and more, or less gray hair and more hair, I guess. So some of those facilitators could be, they could be, in the midst, a little further in a plant than everyone else, but in their 30s, early 40s, as well as some of the trainers, but that's a little harder, I think. But this is where I think we're going to be able to see who the up and coming leaders are. Well, I have one other thing then, and we'll let you go. Some of you know, but M&A now has a national contract with Mission Insight. A number of you have had access to it through your presbytery, your network, which is great. You still do. Had a small hiccup. We've gotten through that with that. But moving forward, we'll be taking all the contracts through M&A. So if you've already been doing it, the price stays the same. Any increase is based off of Mission Insight, not for you. And I worked it out from what all the Midwest and the Florida Church Planting Network and all the other networks were doing. It comes out to about $40 per church per presbytery. As we get more churches or more presbyteries networks signed up, that price then should go down. And so I'm trying to figure out the best way to get this word out and to let presbyteries know. So Nate, in New York, you've had a contract. We just have to make sure Mission Insight or ACST or ATCS, whatever, they shouldn't be receiving any more payment, but should be coming through M&A. Stephanie Dunnington is handling those invoices. But if you're not a part of it, talk with me or Stephanie Dunnington, sdunnington@pcanet.org, and we can get you set up. If you don't know what it is, reach out to me. I do a quick tutorial. The benefit of it is amazing. We plotted almost all of our churches are now plotted, and you're able to download information to comparative studies with a church. Are they reaching their community? So it's not just for church planting. It's for established churches to know, am I reaching my community? Am I relatively reflecting my community, or am I totally way off? And with that, what can I do? So it gives you all the Experian data, all the categories that Experian has come up with, all the demographic, but also religious insights, ministry insights that are constantly being updated. And we've divided the whole thing by presbyteries, so your presbytery can log in and just get that.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
One thought comes to mind as you mentioned that, whether a plant or an existing church looks around their neighborhood and sees a whole bunch of people from a demographic that is not currently in the pew.
Yeah.
So we've got a bunch of Pakistanis or Ethiopians or Afghans around us, and we have no idea how to reach them, how to serve them.
Mm-hmm.
Is that too specialized to fit in any of the tracks that you envision? Would training in that, how to reach, people who speak other languages, immigrant refugee populations, is that more of a specialized track?
That I think a specialized track, or it might need to be, I think, more of a specialized gathering at a different point. Only because at that point, and again, it could fit in here. I'm thinking as you're saying it, so I'm processing. I mean, it would almost need then to be added as another track that someone could jump in on, because some of it may or may not be pertinent to everyone that's there. It's probably more pertinent than they realize, but again, perception of need and reality are that's the struggle. One of the things we're looking at doing is, again, church planting and vitality, is how do we integrate more of what all the M&A ministries are? And that would be a specific place where immigration, refugees and immigrants and ESL kind of combining with church planting, I think is critical, because that's one of the things our church planters do need to consider, I think, more specifically. What does that mean for them? Don't.
Maybe you could just think about, even if it's not a whole module for teaching, how do you just raise the awareness if it wasn't on their mind? A question like, do the demographics of the public school down the street match the congregation? And if not, what can I do so that the school demographics look more like the church?
Well, there is a module on from presence to gathering. So the moment you arrive is at least one, if not two modules on cultural intelligence, using mission insight, dissecting your community. Before you start trying to gather people, you need to be looking at where has God placed you and understanding that context. So there would be at least 2 hours there for that. The one thing I haven't thought of, and it's where, as you look at it, let me know where might else that fit in some portion or some aspect, if that makes sense. Good. Yeah.
Chris, I got a question, and sorry guys, I've been in and out, so I'll have to go listen to the recording because I may have missed this. But when you had the spreadsheet up for different modules, one thought I had, and maybe you're addressing this in one of the modules, there's kind of a no man's land hybrid dynamic of presbyteries planning churches where they don't have a network. So us in Chesapeake, we don't have a network. We don't have a regional network, local network. But we also don't want to just have large established mother churches planting. So, and that was our own church. We were kind of in that no man's land. Have you thought of modules where there's some creative thought process behind saying, well, we have trained, equipped people in our communities, but they don't have mother sending churches, and we don't have a network. So what are some creative ways of making that work in our environment? Just a thought.
Yeah, no, and that would probably come up in that last track of, moving to reproduction, to getting them wherever they're at. And again, these could be long established churches stepping in just to get some of the vibe. The other thing I'd encourage for that is the church planting summit that's coming up in January. And so would encourage you to come there, because we're going to have churches, how they're doing planting, presbyteries, and then it will not be all presentation. It will be a lot of workshop. And so we'll have table groups that are like, hey, I'm in a presbytery that has no clue. We want to get started. Or my presbytery is kind of a network, or really it's kind of a humming machine, but we want to do more, and have them workshopping them. And some of that information then I think can be transferred over for that last track as well. But yeah, no, I think it's a good point. Yeah.
Would it be possible to do a forum like this and actually do a tutorial on the Mission Insight? I think that'd be great to see for those of us that have never seen it before.
Yeah. I'm thinking, when I'm finding time, I can send you a YouTube thing that I did about a couple of years ago. That would be pretty much the same. That can help, but it is a bit better doing it live instead of just the.
Yeah, I see a lot of heads nodding, so maybe it's something we'd be very interested in seeing that.
Yeah. I'll include that link just so you're able to see that. That will help. And what I would probably do for that as well is have, at some point, it would be better, I'll have someone from Mission Insight hosting a gathering.
Chris, the questions I had have already been asked and answered. I just want to say thank you. This is really needed. I'm excited and hope this comes to fruition. I think it's been very valuable.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm excited for it. Again, it's been a while, and I think and we have to rethink how we train and what we're using to train planters now. We can't just reach back on what we did 10, 20 years ago. The biggest need we have right now is team planting, for a variety of reasons. One, I just think it's much more biblical than what we've done. And having that diversification in our teams is so important, which then can much more allow bivocational, and it will also allow us to reach a broader cultural context than we've been reaching. All right. Well, please reach out. Any thoughts you have, I'm gonna, take this, make a YouTube link out of it. So it'll be a little while. I'm gonna send out to you, but send out to everybody. I had about 140 names on the list. And only about 4 of them were dead. Not the people, the links. Sorry, didn't mean to give that impression. And we'll see how this goes. So keep in mind the summit that's coming up January 22nd, 24th. Please sign up and bring a team. That's what we're encouraging. It's going to break the bank, but that's okay, because we made it so that it's $500 if you bring a team, no matter how you have. And if you're like Rick and the guys up in New England, they brought more people than the website could handle. So we had to figure out how to get around that. I know Wisconsin's bringing 5 or 6 guys. Because that's how we're going to get movement. So that's January 22nd, 23rd, 24th in Charlotte at RTS. And then this March 11th, 12th, and 13th, Lakeland, Florida. And you'll be hearing more. We'll be sending out emails. We're getting a social media working on that as well. All right. Well, thank you very much. Let me know how I can help. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Is there next steps for us, or are we just in a wait and see pattern?
The next steps are you'll get another email. So check your junk file because it came from me. Take a look at that the spreadsheet and send me any questions or thoughts you have. And with that, I'll say, if you're interested in leading any of these modules, talk with me. Now, obviously, just because you're interested doesn't mean everyone can do anything, but I'm trying to collect names. If you want to facilitate one of those virtual cohorts, be a place to get that. And then I'll just be following up. One of the questions I've been asking too is who do you know who would be good to teach a module? Because I don't know everybody. And so I need to find those people out as well. Teach a module, lead a virtual cohort. So those are your next steps. Thanks. All right. Well, Lord bless. Thank you much. Appreciate your time.
Chris,
Bye.
thank you.
Thanks, Bud.